Story 1. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife that I won't be opening the door for her creepy friend? My, male 41, wife Becky, female 39, is planning on traveling abroad to visit her sister and her family in the next few days. She'll be gone for the next 2.5 weeks. Over the past year, my wife has become very good friends with our neighbor Emily, female 37, who lives a few houses down. Long story short, Emily makes me feel uncomfortable, and I think she's trying to make a move on me. At first, I thought she was joking, and I didn't think much of her behavior. But now it makes me feel uncomfortable. Earlier today, Becky told me that she chatted with Emily and mentioned how she'd be going overseas for a few weeks. She said that Emily offered to come by and drop off some food for us, myself and our 11-year-old daughter Alice, from time to time. Becky was reluctant to agree, but after Emily insisted, she finally agreed. I was surprised that she'd agree to this without consulting me first, so I told her that it made me uncomfortable. Becky said that Emily means well, and it would be rude if we were to refuse now. I said okay, but that she shouldn't be surprised if Alice and I forget to open the door every time Alice comes knocking. Becky said that I was being a jerk to someone offering us kindness. Am I the a-hole? You weren't consulted on this. She makes you feel uncomfortable, and it sounds like you've had conversations about this. She's good friends with her, and yeah, I'm kind of surprised too that she didn't consult you about this, and Emily just really seems to be very insistent on trying to visit you while the wife is gone. It's kind of sus under the banner of offering kindness, so no, not the a-hole. Story 2. A good friend and neighbor recently passed away and left me 5% of his surprisingly large will. Now, his adult son is suing me. So basically, I lived next door to my neighbor for around 5 years. He was a widower in his early 60s, and we quickly bonded. We watched football together, drank together, and all that. I even went to his church every now and then, even though it's not my bag. The point, I guess, is that even though he had 30 years on me, we were friends. I think this point is important. He recently passed, which sucks. Then I learned he had left me a little something. That little something turned out to be just over $40,000, which nearly knocked myself off, since I had no idea he had that kind of money. That $40K, though a lot of money, was only around 5% of his net worth. So it's not like I'm getting the majority of his estate. But then his son, who I'd met a couple of times, sued me as of yesterday, claiming that I took advantage of his elderly father. I have 3 things going for me. My friend was mentally acute. He had his share of health problems, pack-a-day smoker, but none of them were mental. Our town's not big, and I know people who can attest to the fact that we went to the bar and church and watched football together, proving that we actually had a relationship. Hell, I even mowed his lawn, which our neighbors can attest to. These people can be witnesses, I think, though I don't know how civil suits work. His adult daughter is a very nice lady, and has no problems with her dad leaving me some of his estate. She came around from time to time and knew her dad and I hung out and stuff. The first time I met her, her dad and I were watching college football in our robes while sitting on my porch and drinking beer. We live in the South, so that's acceptable behavior for grown men. Basically, my point is, he and I were friends, and does the son have a pot to pee in regarding this lawsuit? Also, what kind of lawyer should I hire? The lawyer who did this will seem like a straight shooter, but I don't know if hiring him is a conflict of interest or if he is even the right kind of lawyer to represent me. Can't give legal advice, but yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've still got a lot going for you, and I would start, amassing evidence right away, maybe talking to the adult daughter, see if the adult daughter wants to talk with the son or something like that. How greedy. I mean, I think we're assuming that the adult son got the whole rest of it, which I don't think is true. And If this guy's so concerned about this person spending time with this nice old man, where was he? Where was he? I'm sure he had a job or something like that, but this person telling the story was able to spend more time with him, should be happy. 5%, $40,000? Yes, please, I'll take that. Story 3. High school teacher used to call me a loser, and I would never amount to anything. Ran into her 20 years later on an elevator at my office, at the same university where her husband works. I went to a high school in a small southeastern U.S. town. During my junior year, 11th grade, I had a U.S. history teacher who always acted like she was better than anyone else. She was the type that would always say things semi-jokingly around students, which she thought were funny, but came off as pretty mean and hurtful. Unfortunately, she was really popular with parents and the administration because, to be fair, she was a good teacher. And her students did well year after year on the AP exams, taken to earn college credits if you got a high enough score. So she got away with insulting whomever she wanted to insult. Also, she was the type who bragged about being married to a professor. She actually had an affair with him when she was his student, and he was married to his first wife, but I digress. At the time, I was dating a guy, also a junior, who happened to be the friendly neighborhood school illicit substance dealer. This was the 80s, so pot and mushrooms were the go-to recreation. Nothing too hard, but looking back, I think it was a far more innocent time. Our school was a notorious party school and sat adjacent to the university's dorms. The university was a notorious party school as well, so the town was known around the region as a party place. Most parents took it in stride because many of them were university employees or local business owners. Our teachers were pretty cool too, for the most part. Many of them went to the same university, so they knew the town and the local vibe. However, this teacher liked to talk smack about the party-type kids, saying they would not amount to anything, end up in jail, pass away of overdoses, etc. She was always picking on us, saying we were bad eggs and losers. One day while grocery shopping with my mom, we saw her in the parking lot, and she came over to speak to us. She started off by saying I was doing poorly in her class. I was not. I had an A at the time, and that my grades were declining because I was dating that boy, in the most dramatic, snarky Southern accent you can imagine. That boy. That's better. Then she proceeds to tell my mom she was raising an addict, or the J word, I don't know if I can say that word now, and a sleut, and I would not amount to anything. Woo! My mom shot something equally snarky back. I can't remember exactly what, but she came to my defense swiftly. And my teacher scurried off with a shocked look as my mom embarrassed her pretty severely. My parents were the type of parents that were pretty laid back. They knew I was not doing anything worse than what they did in college. I just started partying in high school. Looking back, maybe they were a bit too laid back. The rest of the school year was uncomfortable, to say the least. I dreaded going to her class. She seemed to make my life miserable at every chance, and now worked in insults about my mom, too. I was really hurt and never forgot how mean she was. I graduated the next year, went to college, worked for many years in government, then went back to school and got my PhD. I became a professor at the university in my high school town. I never ended up being an addict or a sleut, however. Riding the elevator one morning to my office, guess who gets on with me? Yep, she was going to visit her husband, who was a professor in another department in the same building. I was not going to say a thing. I just stood there biting my tongue, but she recognized me, but couldn't remember my name, so I reintroduced myself, and she exclaimed, "Oh, you! I can't believe it's you! How are you?" I gave a polite but cool response, and she said in her same snarky voice, "What are you doing here at this office?" I looked her straight in her eye and said, "Going to my office." "Your office?" she replied. "Oh, aren't you the funny one?" I did not say anything, but when I got off the elevator, I turned around, pointed down the hall to my office. "Down the hall, on the left. That department, if you want to drop by. Ask for Dr. Me." And I smiled the fakest smile, flipped her off, and said, "Good to see you," returning the snarky attitude. Additional mildly amusing information. I worked with her husband a few times on various committees. He used to try to get me to go to dinner or out with him. I think just her knowing I was a professor was petty enough for me to feel gratified. Yeah, absolutely. She can just say all she wants now, but she's going to be wrong. And she was wrong in a lot of stuff too. Why would you purposely put someone down in front of their mother when she knows that she was getting A's in the class? Just absolutely horrible. And just not a leg to stand on now. And now the professor, now the husband, is hitting on her now? Awkward. Story 4. Am I the a-hole for losing it and telling in-laws to stop calling me mama and trying to erase my identity? I have 2 kids, both female, 2 and 4. I fracking hate how everyone thinks of me as being just a mommy now. I don't get to be my own person. I'm just mommy. Husband doesn't face this. He gets gifts from everyone that have to do with his hobbies. Me? I got a bunch of mommy smeg. Hee, mommy needs wine. And I like matching outfits, but I don't mean like one of those cutesy matching pajama sets that the nurses and horse girls wear in their staged Christmas Instapics. I mean like people actually think I'm going to go out in public wearing some cutesy matching outfits with my toddlers? As though I think they're mini versions of myself? Or dolls? From the time we got to the in-laws, it was mama this and mama that. At some point, my sister-in-law said it, and I said, "You know my name is not mommy, right?" She just looked at me funny and said, "Of course, silly." I said, "So why do you keep calling me mama? You aren't going around calling your husband papa." Sister-in-law just looked at me like I had 2 heads and was like, okay. This went on all over Christmas. "Here you go, mama. Want another slice, mama?" At that point, I was just like, do you guys mind calling me by my name instead of calling me mama? The same sister-in-law as before did the whole golly gee doe-eye thing and said, "But you're such a good mama." I said that I'm not just a mom. I gestured the things that my husband got for Christmas from them and said, "Why didn't you guys get him anything that says Papa? Everything you gave me is somehow related to me being a mom. Why does he get to be his own person?" Mother-in-law grabbed my hand and squeezed it and said that she was sorry that she made me feel like this. She was just so excited about being a grandma that she never really thought of things like that. I was feeling a little better until sister-in-law 2 and sister-in-law 3 started going after me. One of them did that whole, "Are you okay? Do you need to talk to someone? You sound so angry. It isn't healthy," faux concern that's meant to shame you for having any emotional response. The other one was angry and said that, "Is being a mom somehow beneath you? And do you think you're better than the rest of us and all that?" When we finally left, he asked me why I'd kept it in for so long, and I said that I haven't. No one listened to me before. I've said these things plenty of times. I've always asked them to call me by my name, and not some disgusting nickname that boils me down to giving birth. He nodded, but said that I'd put a big pallor on the weekend and that I need to apologize for the outburst at some point. I said, sure, as soon as sister-in-laws apologize to me for dehumanizing me for years. We're at a stalemate. Am I the a-hole? Not really. Wanting to be your own person, that's great. I mean, did you blow up? I mean, if you yelled and, got mad, you might have to offer an olive branch, as right as you were to express your emotions. Maybe a little more tact. It's really weird with in-laws. I mean, I don't think you're the a-hole for wanting to be known as your own person. And it sucks that you're getting stuff that just pegs you into one specific role. Yeah, that does kind of suck. But maybe start out with, I'm sorry I blew up. Sorry I blew up and ruined everyone's Christmas. If you said it a bunch of times before, I'm sorry that you still have to do this. But they're as much of a-holes for not respecting your wishes.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 5. Want to fail half the class because you lost our papers? Enjoy early retirement. So this happened during senior year in high school 4 years ago. I had an English teacher named Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith, or how she liked to refer to herself, Dr. Smith, she didn't have a doctorate, was a mean old bat that hated anything and everything. She was ugly inside and out. To give a mental image of what she looks like, her face sagged so much it looked like she had a perpetual stroke. She had about 2 feet in between her eyebrows and her eyes. Ugh. Imagine Ursula and Cruella de Vil had a child, and that child had a baby with the devil. You get Mrs. Smith. None of the other English teachers liked her. There was nothing that they nor the administration could do to her tenure. That is, until I became her student. Her teaching style included, but was not limited to, yelling at students, putting them down with petty insults, having us read to ourselves in the middle of class, kicking out students that were dozing off, then later fall asleep at her desk, not letting female students go to the restroom for very obvious reasons, and the occasional losing students' work, then accuse the students of not turning their work in. This last part is what crossed the line for me. You see, I wasn't a grade A student and I sucked at English, so I always played my cards right and made friends with everyone, students and teachers included. So when I struggled and couldn't do something on my own, I let my charm save me and cash out my months of being nice to everyone. However, no one could be friends with Mrs. Smith. I tried being polite. I was met with rudeness. I tried asking her how her morning was. I was met with silence and dead stares. I tried asking how I could improve my writing skills, but she told me that she wasn't willing to help. Within the first week of class, I knew I had met my match. So halfway through the semester, we're working on a big research paper. However, the day after the due date, Mrs. Smith had to go up to Illinois for some family issues for 2 weeks. Mind you, we turned in our papers both in hand and on turnitin.com for plagiarism checking. No biggie. We won't get our grades back for a while, but at least we won't have to deal with her hogwash. Or so we thought. A few days after she got back, only about half of the students got their papers back. The other half, including myself, were sitting there staring and waiting, thinking that she was going to go back to her desk and pull out the remaining papers to return to her students. But nope. She told us to take out our textbooks and start reading Beowulf. Some students, including myself, that didn't receive their papers, tried to interject and inquire about our papers. And she snapped back with, "You should have turned them in when they were due." In unison, we respond with, "We did." Of course, she denies it, and within a few days, our grades drop immediately. At the end of the grading period, second 6 weeks, our report cards show a big fat F for English. Everyone is livid. And the worst part is, if you get anything below a C, you are to be moved to lower level English at the end of the semester. Between the 0 from the paper that carried almost half our grade and only a few weeks remaining in the semester, almost half of the class was doomed to fail. Now, most of the students were happy with having to leave her class. There wasn't much they could do. But I was careful. Remember the teaching methods I mentioned above? Well, Mrs. Smith thought that because we were in a classroom that had no cameras, her behavior wasn't being reported or recorded. She was completely wrong. From the second week on, I started recording audio on my phone every day from the moment I walked into the class to the moment I left. Every day. I caught every single one of her personal attacks of students on tape. When she fell asleep, I pulled out my phone and recorded her. My pleas for help to improve and a refusal to help weren't left out either. Every day I would go home, cut the audio to keep the good parts, and every day my collection of dirt on her grew. And remember how I said we used turnitin.com as well as paper? I had coordinated with all of the other students who were going to fail to screenshot all of their Turnitin receipts and send them to me as proof that they turned in their work. When she decided to fail me for her mistake, she unleashed hell on herself. I went straight to the administration and scheduled a parent-teacher admin conference. A week later, my parents, the principal, the school counselor, the head of the English department, and Mrs. Smith were all present. I started with how she had lost half of the class's work, and most of us failed because of it. She denied it and again accused us of turning in our work late, as well as cheating and a bunch of other hogwash and lies. I remained calm and just pulled out a folder that contained all of the screenshots from my backpack and handed it to the principal, who then passed it to the head of the English department, who then asked Mrs. Smith to explain it. She instantly turned red in the face and started stuttering. Before she could get any words out, I said, "That's not all. Listen to this." I pull out my phone and start playing back the highlights from the semester. All the while, I am staring straight into Mrs. Smith's eyes while trying to hold back a smeg-eating grin. The suspense in the room would have unalived Jason Statham. After the audio finished, the principal looked at me and said, "I think we've seen enough," and asked me to leave. I sat outside the conference room, savoring the muffled yelling through the walls. I'm pretty sure I heard my dad utter the words, "filthy," female body part, C word I can't say, but I don't want to point fingers. The parent-teacher conference was on a Friday. I walked into class the following Monday to see an empty desk and a substitute teacher we all recognized and loved. 10 out of 10 would document everything again. And people wonder why all of us are so willing to bring out our phones and post on social media and document this and that. Because of stuff like this, we need the receipts for some situations. You never know when that one picture or that one audio recording could really save you in the long run. It's a defense mechanism, and we've learned how to use it well.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.